Hello, welcome to Bloody Good. My name is Montgomery and I've been a fan of horror my whole life.
My name's Emily and I've just been dipping my toes into the genre lately.
And this is Old versus New, where we take a look at the original and remake of a classic horror movie.
And we decide which is best using our P.H.L.E.G.M Vibes model. This includes plot,
Horror,
location,
ensemble,
gore,
music,
and most importantly,
vibes.
For each category, we'll both be giving each film a score out of 5, and we'll total it all up at the end and decide which is the best version.
Today, we're looking at two films that follow a group of survivors that, when the dead start attacking the living, barricade themselves in an old farmhouse and wait out the zombie horde in hopes of survival. Today, we're looking at Night of the Living Dead.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
Killers are eating the flesh of the people they kill.
Now, for the original, there's so much I can say. This made the zombie genre. The zombie genre, as of today, would not exist without this film. I love the opening in the graveyard. I still quote, "They're coming to get you, Barbara. Look, there's one now," constantly, to the annoyance of Emily, many, many times today. I think the general tone and setting from the get-go is so strong, and especially that first zombie you see that has gone on to inspire billions of other pieces of zombie media is just so strong. I love the news reports we see constantly throughout the film. It makes the world feel so much bigger, especially the one news report filmed right in front of the Capitol building, which I actually forgot because it's been a couple of years since I've seen this movie. The world feels like it's all coming down around you. And I think it's just such a lovely detail. I also think the ending is tragic for Ben. For all of that he went through, to just get shot and killed by local hillbilly Yanks is just a very depressing, nihilistic, but fucking memorable ending. You can't deny that. Now, the plot of the remake is largely the same, and I don't hold it against that. I think the plot for the original was pretty damn perfect and came about as close to a perfect horror zombie movie as you could try and get. I think the remake does do some good things where I think it sort of compresses and pushes it, so the film does get moving a lot quicker and from the jump, but it is building on an existing foundation, so I don't know how much credit I can really give the remake for that. But I still find it really enjoyable, and I even like the fact they sort of point out that they could just run around with the zombies and get away, which at the end of the film, Barbara really does. I think the most interesting the new film does is with the characters, which we'll talk about later. Now, for plot, I'm going to give the original a 5 and the remake a 4. I think they're both incredibly solid, and I do think the remake does a few things differently, but not really enough to match the original for the legacy it left behind.
In terms of the original, I really like the plot. I think there's some really interesting characters and the story goes along really nicely with them. For the plot, the remake is largely the same as the original. There were a few little changes with characters and the ending is certainly very different. And for me, I prefer the ending just a little bit. But overall, I don't think it adds much or takes much away from the original. So for the original, I'm giving it 3, and the remake, I'm giving it 4.
Now, for the original, there is a certain amount of datedness when it comes to the horror, and I can't hold it against that film. It's a film of its time, but I still think there's some really good scares. I think the first zombie we see on screen is amazing. The body language and facial expressions, which went on to go and inspire millions of other performances of zombies, is great, and it's harrowing and creepy all at the same time. I also love the zombies using tools and being afraid of fire. It's a mini rant, but I've always thought this makes zombies way more interesting, rather than being sort of mindless killing machines. Actually having hints of humanity, I think, makes them so much more scary. And just seeing one pick up a rock and try and smash a window, I think, is very cool. I also think there's smaller moments. I think the body we see at the top of the stairs is very horrific when you first see it, as well as the zombie we see moving its eyes after being stabbed in the head through a tire iron. Now, the rest of the film doesn't really grab me that much, less in horror, but I still think it's very entertaining. Now, with this film being directed by Tom Savini, who previously did all the effects and makeup on a lot of George Romero's previous films, a lot of the horror is directly tied into the gore, so I'm going to save it on it for that category. But I do think the presentation of the zombies are just horrific. There's specifically the one zombie that comes through the window, who's this bald, skinny zombie who just looks absolutely horrific. I do remember hearing somewhere this was just Tom Savini's taxi driver, who he really liked the look of, who he invited to be in the film. Which, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if that's fully true, but I'm going to put it forward because it's a funny story. I will say though, I think one thing this film does really well is a lot of the jump scares, which I'm usually not a big fan of, but a lot of our first initial zombies we see actually do come out of nowhere and are quite scary, especially the very first zombie. He literally jumps up out of nowhere, and it really did actually give me a bit of a fright because I just wasn't expecting it. So for horror, just because the remake actually made me jump quite a few times, I'm going to give it a 4. And the original, whilst I'm sure scary at the time, doesn't quite hold up, and I don't want to hold that against it too much, but by comparing the two, I'm going to have to give it a 3.
In terms of the original, I think there's some really interesting takes throughout this film. I think the zombies have a level of intelligence to them, which I haven't really seen in any other films, and I really enjoyed that kind of take on zombies. It felt fresh, you know, despite this being a very old film. And there were definitely some scary points across this film, but nothing was outrageously horrific or scary to me. It just kind of ambled along, and there were some moments, but nothing outrageously scary. I think for me, the remake was a lot scarier. It gets into the action of the horror a lot quicker at the graveyard. It just all starts much quicker, and I like that it gets straight into that. I think the zombies are also a lot scarier in this film, and I think that is a bit of a trend for me, perhaps, with Romero films, that I don't find the zombies particularly scary in the originals, but the remakes, I find them a lot scarier. So I appreciate that in this one. So I'm giving the original a 3 and the remake a 4.
Those things can't get through this lousy pile of wood.
I'm probably going to combine locations for both the remake and the original, as they are very similar, and that's not a bad thing at all. I love the farmhouse setting. I think it is great. I love the opening in the graveyard, and I like, for the most part, that's basically the entire film. We see a couple different places via news reports, and in the remake we do actually see a bit more of the world, especially at the end, when Barbara goes out and teams up with the hunters. But I do think it is just such a solid and amazing location, and I really do have to give props to the remake, how the house is so similar to the original. I think it is just truly one of the most iconic horror locations of all time. So for the original, by being just so iconic, it's got to be at a 5. I truly do love the farmhouse. And the remake, great, doesn't really add much to it, but it's very faithful. It's probably going to be sitting at a 4.
Now for location, I'm going to talk about both films together because I think they're really, really on par with each other. I think the location is really strong. I think the house setting is really intimidating, and I like that the house kind of is surrounded from all sides. There's zombies coming from every direction, and I think that really heightens the fear that you feel while watching. And I think both films do it really well. I like this really small enclosed location of just this house and the grounds around it with the little petrol pump. I think it's really strong in both films. So I'm going to give both films a 4.
We could have used some help.
I love the characters in this film, especially in the original. I've said it before, but I do genuinely think this would be a great theatre play, especially not only because it's just one location, but I think the characters are so strong. I love the infighting between Ben and Mr. Cooper. I think Ben especially is probably one of the most iconic horror characters of all time. Mr. Cooper, on the other hand, I think is also a really interesting character. He's obviously an asshole and probably not a great person, but he is very human. He does come across as just a father who is scared because he's in a situation he can't control and is lashing out at people. I think he reaches his demise, quite rightfully so, but I do really enjoy his character throughout. Now, I think the two younger kids, I can kind of give or take. They don't really have that much memorable scenes other than blowing up in a truck. You know, they got the job done and they added to the body count, so there's something. I do think Barbara is probably the most disappointing in this film. I think a film that opens with a character just for her to become catatonic and literally voiceless for the rest of the film is quite dull and quite boring, and to the point where she became quite frustrating and I was actively rooting for her to die at the end. Now, in the remake, they do a lot of things better and some things a bit worse in my opinion. I think Johnny's actor is really hamming it up in the beginning, from like quite a subtle performance to him being like dragged behind his mother's grave. I think it's a lot. I mean, I still like it, I enjoy it, but I think the original Johnny, who I quote all the time, is a lot more memorable and a lot more realistic. I do think the head slam's a lot better, don't get me wrong, but yeah, don't love the new Johnny personally. Now, I do like this version of Ben as well. I don't think he is quite as good as the original. The original was just up there for me. As well as I don't love what they do with his character near the end. I sort of understand it being a commentary on masculinity to a degree between Ben and Mr. Cooper, but I just think the original ending had so much power in it that the new one, I appreciate they went for something different, but I don't think it landed for me personally. Now, where I think the film really does suffer, I think, is Mr. Cooper's character. In the original film, as I said, he kind of came across as an asshole, but a scared father, sort of trying to do his best. In the remake, he is actively a piece of shit. He's hitting his wife, he's actively screaming and fighting people constantly, he's ripping the gun off Barbara. You know, look, he's entertaining in terms of a villain, but I think it does take away a lot of his nuance. Now, I did just mention her. Barbara in this film is a completely different character, and I really do appreciate it. I appreciate we have this character who's a bit more level-headed, between Ben and Mr. Cooper and these masculine, fragile egos hitting each other in the head, complaining about being in the attic or being in the basement. Having Barbara in there as sort of a sensible ass kicker, I really appreciate. And I think it's so much better than what her original character was, like leagues above. I wouldn't even want to compare the two. So I really do appreciate they actually made Barbara, you know, a character. So for the ensemble, I'm going to be giving the original 4, just due to how realistic the characters felt. It does lose a point because Barbara just isn't a character. And with the remake, it's probably being considered a 3. I really do love what they did with Barbara, but it felt like a lot of the other characters became a lot more cartoony.
In terms of the original, I think there are some really interesting character choices. I think Ben is the standout character of the film. He's just really interesting. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He kind of makes sense of what's going on really quickly. And he's pretty intelligent. He gets stuff sorted out quite quickly. Barbara, I find quite annoying. She just sits there and stares off into space. You know, fair enough. She was visiting her mum's grave and her brother died right in front of her. And I'm going to say he kind of deserved it. He was quite annoying. I just don't think she did a lot for me personally. And once they reach this house, you've got the Coopers in the basement, and Mr. Cooper is just really annoying, and you want to kind of smack him around the face because he's just a bit of an arsehole. And then you kind of feel for his wife and his daughter, and then you don't feel so much for the daughter, but you do kind of still feel for the wife. But ultimately, I think it was a really strong ensemble performance. In terms of the remake, I think there's a really strong ensemble as well. I think Ben, again, is the standout. I think he's a really interesting character, and he's played really well by Tony Todd. And I think Barbara is very much elevated in this film. She's not just sat there vacant staring the whole time. She is standing on business and she is having a blast, basically. She is taking down zombies just as much as Ben is, and I love that for her. So this definitely works for me. And with the Coopers, they're still annoying and not my favourite characters to enjoy watching, but like I've said before, if they get a reaction from me, that means something good's happened, whether I like them or not. The fact that there's a reaction. So I'm giving the original a 3 and the remake a 4.
So in this movie, there isn't as much gore as, you know, you typically expect from a George A. Romero movie. There's probably a lot more than you would get in your movie that sort of came out around this time, but sort of comparing it retrospectively, it is a tad disappointing. Now, I really do like the bits we do have. As mentioned, the body at the top of the staircase is horrific and I think really good and holds up really well, as well as the zombie being stabbed through the head with a tire iron and still looking around. Now, the point I've already sort of mentioned, 2 zombies I already spoke about, kind of says a lot. There's some other good bits, like the fingers being chopped off the zombies at the door and the sort of bones we see them eating later on, but there's nothing that really sticks out or made me go, whoa. Look, it's entertaining and it's fun. And to be fair, this movie isn't really meant to be that gory, I feel like. I feel like it's got the perfect amount of gore for what this movie is. Now, I don't think I made it a secret on this channel. I love Tom Savini and I love his gore. And yeah, no, of course a movie directed by Tom Savini has some of the best gore in the franchise. The head slam by Johnny at the beginning. In the original, you know, it looks rough. Barbara later on in the film thinks that he might still be alive. And to be fair, he might be. You know, in this film, absolutely not. That man is dead as a fucking doornail as soon as he hits that rock. There's also just some other great zombies. We see a zombie with a broken back, which I also always think zombies with broken limbs are sort of underutilized in terms of horror and zombie movies. And then we also just get some great moments like a crowbar going straight through a zombie's head. There's too many pieces to mention. It's just beautifully peppered throughout this film. Just tiny pieces of gore and then some really big pieces. This is also just a side note. I really like Barbara when she's just sort of poking the hand with the fire stick, just trying to get it close to the other zombie, just like, ugh. But it's like, yeah, it's gross. I don't want to touch it. Now for the gore, I'm going to give the original a 3. it sort of doesn't fully deliver for me what I want, but I also understand it's not necessarily that kind of movie, and I think the gore we do get in the movie is perfectly serviceable. Now the remake, that's going to be a 5 from me. I just love Tom Savini's work. I will watch anything that Tom Savini is involved in, and especially his gore. It's just great. It's amazing. I love it when it comes to zombies. He just has a magical touch that makes any movie better.
In terms of the original, I think there's quite a lot to like. In terms of gore, there's a lot of really good zombie kills throughout this film, and I think an especially gross part is when the daughter becomes a zombie and she starts killing her mother with the little paint scraper trough thing. I don't know tools, but when she kills her mum with that, it's pretty gross. And I think a benefit of this compared to other George A. Romero films is that this film is in black and white. So I don't have a problem with the neon red blood like in other films. So I think the gore works better for me personally in black and white for Romero. In terms of the remake, I think this is also a really strong film for gore. There are some really disgusting looking zombies around, and the kills are pretty gruesome as well. There's one particular zombie, like as it's shedding its clothes from the funeral, you can see the autopsy stitching and it's kind of pulling apart and it's disgusting. And that was kind of one of the first zombies you see, so a pretty good way to start the film. When they have a little look around the house and they find the guy who had unfortunately shot himself before all of it happened, before he became a zombie himself, he kind of took the good way out, I guess. But he did lose his hand because of that, and when that hand falls from the top of the stairs, it's pretty gross too. So I'm giving the original a 3 and the remake a 4.
We heard the girl calling out, asking if anyone was here. We was just scared, that's all.
Now, for the original, I really like the music. I've been watching a lot more classic horror in black and white recently, and I really love the epic orchestral score that a lot of these horror films have back in the day. I think it just it really puts the film in a sense of place and time and makes it feel a lot more epic in scope and in horror. So I think it really works for the film. One thing I do really love about the music is the scene where the child is killing the mother with the cement trowel. It's so out of nowhere and so juxtaposed to the rest of the film that I think it is just an unforgettable sequence. I think it is so interesting, so fascinating, and there's a reason it, created so much controversy at the time when it was released. Now, the remake, I enjoy it. It's sort of serviceable, but I kind of had to remind myself of the tracks that were on it. So for the remake, I'm going to be giving it a 3, and the original is probably going to be sitting at a 4.
For the original, I just quite like the soundtrack, and I don't really have much else to say other than I really liked it. I thought it was strong. I thought it was much better than some of the original Romero films I've seen before, where they just don't really fit the vibe of the film. Whereas this one I really enjoyed. And I think the only bit that undercut it for me was when the daughter was killing the mum, and there was these weird sci-fi noises playing over the murder. That was the only part of the soundtrack that I just didn't really vibe with, but the rest of it was really strong for me. And for the remake, I thought it was largely the same. I think it's an interesting soundtrack. There are some wacky music choices again, and I think this is quite a thing amongst Romero films and their remakes. But it didn't feel as misplaced in this film as it has in some other ones. So I still quite liked the soundtrack in this film. So for music, I'm giving them both a 4.
Now, when it comes to the original, there's something black and white horror does that just instantly has a certain je ne sais quoi about it. I really like it. I really like the harsh lighting, especially when Barbara enters into the house. We get these really harsh lights and shadows. I think it just looks amazing. I think it's really good. I think the entire vibe, the energy of this film is completely unmatched. When the zombies are sieging in and we're seeing the inside of the house all barricaded up, and that is what all zombie media looks like. That is the blueprint. It is the foundation that everything was built on. And because of that, I think it's just amazing. I think just when it comes to the original, there is an energy this film has that is just unlike anything else. You're witnessing literally the birth of one of the most popular horror characters of all time, the zombie. And I think that just makes it unmatched to anything. Now, I do really enjoy the remake. I do feel like it loses a certain something being in colour. I read an interesting bit of trivia that Tom Savini originally wanted the film to start in black and white and slowly become colourful, and I think that would have been very interesting to see, and hell, I know they're doing a re-release soon, so maybe we'll see a cut of that. But that being said, I do really like the costuming for the zombies. It's something I really liked about later Romero films, and it's really present in this one, even though this is a Tom Savini film. I also have nowhere else to put this in, but I do just find it funny how much Ben is just like throwing kicks and rugby tackling and pulling off like WWE moves on these zombies. It's fucking great. I'm gonna give the original a 5 and the remake a 4.
In terms of the original, I actually really enjoyed this film. I thought it was much better than the other Romero films I've watched so far. And I just liked the general vibe of the film. I think the black and white certainly added to it compared to the other Romero films I've seen. Just added something a little bit different, and I really appreciated that change. And I thought all of the acting choices and all of the gore and the horror and the music, I think it all added to make a pretty good vibe for a film, and I did actually enjoy it. And for the remake, it's pretty much the same as well. I actually really enjoyed watching that as well. I thought the characters were interesting. I liked the elevation of characters like Barbara. And I think the vibe of the film was pretty scary, pretty creepy. And for me, the only thing where it lost me a bit, was the end with the group of survivors that found Barbara. I didn't love that ending. But otherwise, the vibes of the film were pretty solid for me. So I'm giving both a 4.
So we've given you our opinions and the machine our scores. Now it's time to find out scientifically, what is the better film? Let's go find out. Oh, 55 to 53. I'm genuinely a bit upset by this because I love the original, but we do rank these blindly and then do the calculations later on, so this is our true opinion combined. Now you may think we're wrong, and that's fine, you can let us know. But according to the P.H.L.E.G.M scale, which has been scientifically approved, this is correct.
Why don't you hop in the comments and use the P.H.L.E.G.M scale yourself and tell us what you think of both of the films and whether you agree or disagree with us.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. We genuinely do really appreciate it. Now, if you like this kind of content and want to see more, first of all, feel free to subscribe and like the video, a bit cheeky to ask. But also, we do have other content. We've got Dawn of the Dead here, where we compared the original with the remake, and then also The Crazies, another great George Romero classic. Thank you again for watching. We really appreciate your time.